Book 2, Chapter 6 of British Goblins, Welsh Folklore, Fairy Mythology, Legends and Traditions. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. British Goblins, Welsh Folklore, Fairy Mythology, Legends and Traditions by Wirt Sikes, Book 2. Chapter 6. Part 1. The devil has often appeared in Wales in his customary form, or with his distinctive marks covered up by such clothing as mortals wear. There was even a tailor in Cardiganshire who had the honour of making a suit of clothes for his sulphuric majesty. The medieval view of this malignant spirit, which makes the devil out as dull and stupid as he is mendacious and spiteful, still lingers in some parts. Those formal pacts with the devil, the first traces of which are found in the 12th and 13th centuries, have been made in great numbers in Wales, and tales in which the devil is outwitted by a mortal are still preserved with much distinctness in various localities. That the myth of Polyphemus reappears in all accounts of this sort is pretty well agreed among students of folklore. Hercules and Cacus, Polyphemus and Odysseus, Peredur and the one-eyed monster of the Mabinogion, Gambrinus and der Teufel, Jack the Giant Killer, Norse Jotuns and Arabian genii, tricked and bottled, all these are deemed outgrowths of the same primeval idea, to wit, the victory of the sun god over the night fiend, and the story of Sion Cent's compact with the Diawl is doubtless from the same root. Certain it is that were not the devil at some times gullible, he would never have been so useful as a familiar spirit, never could have been made so completely a slave to his mortal masters. The Pope, Benedict IX, who had 7 evil spirits in a sugar bottle, merely subdivided the arch-fiend in the same way the genii of old tales are subdivided, now existing as a dense and visible form, again expanding to blot out the sky, and again entering the narrow compass of a bottle or a nutshell, coexisting in a million places at the same instant, yet having a single individuality. Part 2. Tradition relates that Sion Cent was a famous necromancer in Monmouthshire, who outwitted the devil not once but many times. He lives in popular legend simply as a worker in magic, but in reality he was a worthy minister, the Reverend John Kent, who flourished from 1420 to 1470, and wrote several theological works in Latin. In his native Welsh he confined himself to poetry, and Sion Cent was his Cymric pseudonym. Like many learned men in those days, he was accredited with magical powers by the ignorant peasantry, and of his transactions with the devil many stories were then invented which still survive. One relates that he once served as a farmer's boy, and was set to keep the crows from the corn. But preferring to go to Grosmont Fair, he confined the crows in an old roofless barn by a magic spell till the next day, when he returned. His compact with the devil enabled him to build the bridge over to Monmouth, near Grosmont, which still bears his name. The compact gave the devil the man's soul, as all such compacts do, the stipulation being that if his body were buried either in or out of the church, his soul should be forfeit to the Diawl. But the shrewd Welshman gave orders that he should be buried exactly under the chancel wall, so that he should lie neither in the church nor out of it, and the devil was made a fool of by this device. A precisely similar tradition exists concerning an old gentleman in Carmarthenshire. Part 3. A popular legend giving the origin of the jack-o'-lantern in Wales deals with the idea of a stupid devil. A long time ago there lived on the hills of Arfon an old man of the name of Sion Dafydd, who used to converse much with one of the children of the bottomless pit. One morning Sion was on his way to Llanfairfechan, carrying a flail on his shoulder, for he had corn there, when whom should he meet but his old friend from the pit, with a bag on his back, and in it 2 little devils like himself. After conversing for some time they began to quarrel, and presently were in the midst of a terrible fight. Sion fell to basting the devils with his flail, until the bag containing the 2 little ones went all to pieces, and the 2 tumbling out fled for their lives to Rhiwgyfylchi, which village is considered to this day a very wicked place from this fact. Sion then went his way rejoicing, and did not for a long time encounter his adversary. Eventually, however, they met, and this time Sion had his gun on his shoulder. "What's that long thing you're carrying?" inquired the devil. "That's my pipe," said Sion. Then the devil asked, Shall I have a whiff out of it?" "You shall," was Sion's reply, and he placed the mouth of his gun in the devil's throat and drew the trigger. Well, that was the loudest report from a gun that was ever heard on this earth. "Ach, tch, tch," exclaimed the smoker, "your pipe is very foul," and he disappeared in a flame. After a lapse of time Sion met him again in the guise of a gentleman, but the Welshman knew it was the tempter. This time he made a bargain for which he was ever afterwards sorry. He sold himself to the devil for a sum down, but with the understanding that whenever he could cling to something the devil should not then control him. One day, when Sion was busily gardening, the evil one snatched him away into the air without warning, and Sion was about giving up all hopes of again returning to earth when he thought to himself, "I'll ask the devil one last favour." The stupid devil listened. "All I want is an apple," said Sion, "to moisten my lips a bit down below. Let me go to the top of my apple tree, and I'll pick one." "Is that all?" quoth the devil, and consented. Of course Sion laid hold of the apple tree, and hung on. The devil had to leave him there, but the old reprobate was too wicked for heaven, and the devil having failed to take him to the other place, he was turned into a fairy, and is now the jack-o'-lantern. Part 4. Best known among the natural objects in various parts of Wales which are connected with the devil in popular lore is the Devil's Bridge in Cardiganshire. Associated with this bridge are several legends, which derive their greatest interest from their intrinsic evidences of an antiquity in common with the same legends in other lands. The guidebooks of the region, like guidebooks everywhere, in their effort to avoid being led into unwarranted statement, usually indulge in playful, sarcastic references to these ancient tales. They are much older, however, than the bridge itself can possibly be. The devil's activity in bridge building is a myth more ancient than the medieval devil of our acquaintance. The building story of the Devil's Bridge in Cardiganshire runs briefly thus. An old woman who had lost her cow spied it on the other side of the ravine, and was in great trouble about it, not knowing how to get over where the animal was. The devil, taking advantage of her distress, offered to throw a bridge over the ravine, so that she might cross and get her cow. But he stipulated that the first living creature to cross the bridge should be his. The old woman agreed. The bridge was built, and the devil waited to see her cross. She drew a crust of bread from her pocket, threw it over, and her little black dog flew after it. "The dog's yours, sir," said the dame, and Satan was discomfited. In the story told of the old bridge over the Main at Frankfurt, a bridge contractor and his troubles are substituted for the old woman and her cow. Instead of a black dog, a live rooster appears, driven in front of him by the contractor. The Welsh Satan seems to have received his discomfiture good-naturedly enough. In the German tale he tears the fowl to pieces in his rage. In Switzerland every reader knows the story told of the Devil's Bridge in the St. Gotthard Pass. A new bridge has taken the place, for public use, of the old bridge on the road to Andermatt, and to the dangers of the crumbling masonry are added superstitious terrors concerning the devil's power to catch anyone crossing after dark. The old Welsh bridge has been in like manner superseded by a modern structure, but I think no superstition like the last noted is found at Hafod. Part 5. The English have a saying that the devil lives in the middle of Wales. There is in every part of Wales that I have seen a custom of whitening the doorsteps with chalk, and it is said to have originated in the belief that his satanic majesty could not enter a door thus protected. The devil of slovenliness certainly would find difficulty in entering a Welsh cottage if the tidiness of its doorstep is borne out in the interior. But out of doors everywhere there are signs of the devil's active habits. His flowers grow on the river banks, his toes are imprinted on the rocks. Near Tintern Abbey there is a jutting crag overhung by glooming branches of the yew called the Devil's Pulpit. His Eminence used in other and wickeder days to preach atrocious morals, or immorals, to the white-robed Cistercian monks of the abbey from this rocky pulpit. One day the devil grew bold, and taking his tail under his arm in an easy and dégagé manner, hobnobbed familiarly with the monks, and finally proposed, just for a lark, that he should preach them a nice red-hot sermon from the rood loft of the abbey. To this the monks agreed, and the devil came to church in high glee. But fancy his profane perturbation (I had nearly written holy horror) when the treacherous Cistercians proceeded to shower him with holy water. The devil clapped his tail between his legs and scampered off howling, and never stopped till he got to Llandogo, where he leaped across the river into England, leaving the prints of his talons on a stone. Part 6. Where accounts of the devil's appearance are so numerous, it is perhaps somewhat surprising so little is heard of apparitions of angels. There are reasons for this, however, which might be enlarged upon. Tradition says that, in former times, there were frequent visits of angels to Wales, and their rare appearance in our days is ascribed to the completion of revelation. One or two modern instances of angelic visitation are given by the prophet Jones. There was David Thomas, who lived at a place called the Pantow, between the towns of Carmarthen and Laugharne. He was a gifted brother, who sometimes preached in the dissenting way. One night, when he was at prayer alone in a room which stood apart from his house, there was suddenly a great light present, which made the light of the candle no longer visible. And in that light appeared a band of angels like children, very beautiful in bright clothing, singing in Welsh these words: how long, return ye sons of Adam? How long will ye persecute the godly Christians? After a time they departed, reappeared, departed again. The great light faded, and the light of Mr. Thomas's candle was once more visible on his table. There was also Rhys David, a man of more than common piety, who lived in Carmarthenshire, near Whitlands. At the time of his death, it was testified by several religious persons who were in the room, that there was heard by them and by the dying man the singing of angels. It drew nearer and nearer as his death struggle grew imminent, and after his death they heard the pleasant, incomparable singing gradually depart until it was out of hearing. That the dying do see something more, in the last moment of expiring nature, than it is given to living eyes to see, is a cherished belief by numberless Christian men and women, whom to suspect of superstitious credulity were to grossly offend. This belief is based on exclamations uttered by the dying, while with fixed and staring eyes they appeared to gaze intently at some object not visible to the bystanders. But that the bystanders also saw or heard voice or vision from the unknown is not often pretended. Part 7. Reference has been made to the euphemisms in use among all peoples to avoid pronouncing the name of the devil. That many good folk still consider the word devil, lightly spoken, a profane utterance, only second to a similar utterance of God's name, is a curious survival of old superstitions. No prohibition of this sort attaches to the words demon, fiend, etc., nor to such euphemisms common in both Welsh and English as the adversary, the evil one, etc. It is an old custom in North Wales to spit at the name of the devil, even when so innocently used as in pronouncing the name of the Devil's Bridge. The peasantry prefer to call the bridge Pont y Gwrydrwg, the bridge of the wicked one, and spitting and wiping off the tongue are deemed a necessary precaution after saying devil, diafol, or diawol. The phrase "I hope to goodness," so common in Wales and elsewhere, is clearly but another euphemism for God. The goodness meant is the divine beneficence. Goodness sake is but a contraction for God's sake, the Hebrew tetragrammaton, which was invested with such terror as representing the great I Am, finds an explanation, according to the ideas of Welsh scholars, in the bardic traditions. These relate that by the utterance of his name God created this world, the name being represented by a symbol, 3 lines which typify the focusing of the rising sun's rays at the equinoxes and solstices. The first ray is the creator, the second the preserver, and the third the destroyer. The whole are God's name. This name cannot be uttered by a mortal. He has not the power. Therefore it remains forever unuttered on earth. At the creation the universe uttered it in joy at the newborn world. The morning stars sang together. At the last day it will be uttered again. Till then it is kept a secret, lest it be degraded, as it has been by the Hindus, who from the 3 rays created their 3 false gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Tradition relates that Einigan Gaur saw the divine name appear and inscribed it on 3 rods of mountain ash. The people mistook the 3 rods thus inscribed for God himself, and Einigan died from grief at their error. Part 8. The devil with which we are acquainted is a character unknown to Greek or Roman mythology. This devil was a later invention, but his identity with the genii or jinns of the Arabian Nights, the Divs of Persian history, is clear enough. Ahriman, the evil spirit, king of the realms of darkness and of fire, was apparently the progenitor of Satan, as Vritra was of Ahriman. Both these ancient arch-fiends appeared as serpents in form, and were myths representing the darkness, slain by the light or the sun god, in the one case called Indra, in the other Ormuzd. The medieval devil with horns and hoofs does not appear in the records of Judaism. He is an outgrowth of the moral principle of the Christian era, and traced to his origins he is simply a personification of the adversary in the never-ending struggle on earth between light and darkness. That struggle is not, in nature, a moral one, but it remains today, as it was in the beginning, the best type we have of the battle between right and wrong, between truth and error. When God said, "Let there be light," the utterance became the symbol and guide of virtue, of brave endeavor, and of scientific research, until the end. End of Book 2, Chapter 6. Recording by Amelia Chesley.